All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Look Up podcast. We're back.
We are back. And in the
Season
car.
2. And for those of you who are watching, you can tell we're in a different environment. For those of you who are listening, you probably heard all that beeping from us reversing. We have decided to switch it up a little bit this season, and we're taking it to the car.
We're on the road.
Those of you who've been listening from the beginning, you may have recalled that we started this podcast because of the conversations that we had with each other in the car. Like, this is where I guess our church was, in the car. We would have really interesting, really deep, really philosophical conversations sitting in this vehicle. I don't know what it is about a car and why it gets me talking and why we are able to have these type of conversations, but the car just feels that way. So we're like, you know what, let's bring the podcast in the car, and what comes of it is what comes of it. So We're back. We missed you guys. Thank you so much for listening and supporting as always, and we're just excited to talk about what's been going on, I guess, over these past few months. We can start there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been absolutely amazing, man. I feel like I've myself have been renewed over the past handful of months, and I'm excited for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think it's good, and it was a good reminder for us that it's okay to take time to not do anything. You know what I mean? I think we live in such a culture where it's praised to always be doing something, like the grind, quote unquote, the hustle, quote unquote. It's like if you aren't doing any sort of either or, then you're not living life. And I think we kind of really got to understand what it means to rest. I mean, if we even look back, and it's biblical, you know what I mean? And we even had like a service on it too recently, of the importance of rest, and that we were made to also rest, or else if we weren't, then we wouldn't need to sleep 8 hours every single night.
That's
like
true.
It goes down to like even a daily thing where every single day we need to rest. So why are we withholding ourselves from that on a weekly, monthly, like yearly basis, trying to focus so hard on our goals, or I don't know, you know what I mean? And I think like there's this whole idea of being just a workaholic, and just my personal thoughts. I think that, you know, someone like God who works so hard, obviously, he still rested on that seventh day. When he created everything, he still took that day to rest. So I think that's what it kind of felt like for us. We were able to really like rest. Yeah.
And sometimes you need that. You don't need anybody to tell you when and where you can do that. You can take that time whenever you need to. And like what Alani was saying, it's very healthy to do that. And I think it'll help renew your spirit. And it'll help, honestly, you get closer to God, because, you know, in the work, you forget why you started doing it in the first place. You forget why, you know, what's the important thing and what the message you're trying to get out there for us specifically, you know, and you start trying to do it for the clicks, which is so easy to get caught up in. And I think just having time away is very, very key. It's very crucial. So, but we're back, and we're very excited to be with you guys again for another season. So we're excited. We're going to have some guests on this season, and we're just really pumped to just be in community with you guys again. And we realized that we needed to come back, though. Even though there was rest there, we did need to come back, because we were just running into people over and over and over that we didn't even know, that were saying like, oh my gosh, I've listened to your podcast.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, we haven't recorded an episode or released an episode for like
3 months.
2-3 months.
Yeah.
So that I just was also, I think if you keep your eyes open and your ears open to the world around you, I think God will find different ways to speak to you. I remember I was having a conversation with someone. I don't know why this reminded me of it. This is a while ago, maybe years ago. I was having a conversation with someone about how I told them I can hear God. And they were like, well, what does he sound like? And I was like, I mean, I guess there have been some instances where I felt like I physically heard a voice in my head that I knew was not of my own thinking. And I said, okay, well, this is not my own thought, so this must be God. And it was a whole nother story I'll get into maybe one day. But this person asked me, like, you know, like, what does he sound like? And I think a lot of times it isn't necessarily maybe a man in your ear that you hear, like audibly, or, maybe it isn't even sometimes like a thought that comes into your brain that isn't your own thoughts, and it sounds something that you wouldn't yourself normally have chosen to do.
Right.
Maybe it is someone that God sent your way that he's speaking through. You know what I mean? And maybe he's sending a person that will come across your path to tell you something, or maybe it's something that you come across, in a reading that you're doing, or when you're opening the Bible and you read a verse that reminds you of something else, or if you're reading a book or reading something online, like he can speak to you in so many different ways, and whatever you're open to receiving. And that's another thing that I've learned over this past few months, is keeping my eyes and ears open for ways that he's communicating with me.
Right. No doubt. And I mean, God, it's like what you said, it's biblical. You look back into the Bible and he's talked to so many different leaders and important people in the Bible through so many different ways, through talking donkeys, through burning bushes, through dreams, through literally anything. Like that's anything, true. Any way that God could get to the people, he would get to the people. You know what I mean? So, you never know where you will see God show up. And I think that might just be like a misconception, or just like something or maybe it's just like Hollywoodized, you know what I mean? That, if, you have a deity speaking to you, it's going to sound like Morgan Freeman, and it's gonna, he's gonna have a big deep voice, and it's gonna be booming, and it's gonna be loud and clear. And sometimes majority of the times, from what I found, at least me personally, is that's not always it. You know what I mean? Sometimes he speaks to me and I don't even hear him audibly, but I feel him, if that makes sense. Like I feel his word and I feel his presence, and I'm like, all right, this is what God wants me to do. Or this is what God is trying to tell me to do right now. And you can just feel it. And for those who don't know what that feels like, that just means that you're far from him right now. And that's okay, because I think that happens to all of us.
It's like, because life is so, I don't even know what word I could use, but because life is just so,
it's messy.
You're not always on the progressive up and up, and you're not always like getting better. There's in-betweens of you getting better where you may fall and you may hit, another low, because that's just how that's the ebbs and flows of it. And so even when it feels like, I know for me in my own personal life, I'll speak for myself, where I felt like really close with God, and then within that next few months later, I'm like, borderline, do I believe in him? You know what I mean? And it's like,
that's facts.
I think it's because it's just life when things get thrown your way. And so when you look at any relationship, it has to be so continuous. Like, if I think about us, like, it's just, there's days when we're really good, and then there's some days that's just not so good, you know what I mean? And like, that's just a relationship. And so when you look at that same thing with God, that relationship that you have, that it needs to just be continuously worked on, It isn't just something that you have and it's always just going to be like getting better and better. It is something that you continuously work on. And so something that I've had to learn to do is like ask God, like, can you just tell me if I'm on the right path? Like, can you just, speak to me? Can you let me know? And it goes down to, even from what we've talked about many times, of like, you need to ask.
Right.
And you shall receive.
Right.
You need to knock on that door, and it'll be open for you. You need to seek it, and you'll find it. So when you remember that, I had to anyways, to really like continuously rebuild that relationship. And I think that's happened to me over the past few months. I think I have hit like some real personal mental roadblocks, financial roadblocks, emotional roadblocks, relational I've hit a lot of roadblocks over the past few months, just being honest. And so I did feel at one point I was really far away from him, and I was kind of going down into like, really unhappy state of mind. And I just had to ask for him again.
Right.
I think it's like, you may have asked to receive God in your heart once, but it doesn't mean you have to stop asking him to receive,
Yeah, it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's a practice, man. You have to continue to practice. You have to continue to pray, and you have to continue to believe. You can't just believe one time. Name one thing that you have to do one time And then that's it. You never
And
have
then
to
it just
do
stays
anything.
that way,
And then it
you
just
know?
stays that way for forever.
Even a building. You build a building one time, it needs to be maintenance.
Yep.
Or
Needs-
it will crumble, which is
Yep.
great, you know, like abandoned places, even though the building was built with concrete and good stuff like from, you know,
Steel,
back
reinforced
in the
titanium.
day, like the Romans and stuff like that, building those Colosseums, they're still partially there, but majority, it's crumbled. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't maintained.
No matter how magnificent the structure is.
Right.
And if they didn't like keep the pyramids in tip-top shape, they would be under sand too.
Right.
So it's just like, it's the same thing. No matter how magnificent the structure was or how impressively it was built at first, it still needs to be maintained. And that holds true for every relationship that you have, whether that's a relationship with your spouse, with God, with your parents, with your friends, no matter how good it was in the past. And I think we always like to look back to those times, but like, I remember when, you know, I remember when, and it's just like, but what's happening now though?
Yeah.
What's happening now though?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what's the state of it now? Not what was the state of it back then. And it's just
Right.
like exactly how, like what we were talking about last night. I was just like, I remember when I used to have abs, and you were like, babe, that was 10 years ago now. You know what I mean? I think we hit that at one point where like we keep harping back onto this moment. We think it only happened last year, and you look up and it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And you were 18 10 years ago, and you
Yeah.
were 20 10 years ago, or you were 25 10 years ago, and then it gets away from us and we forget that we need to continue to maintain it in the present
Right.
in order to secure our future.
Yeah. That's
So,
true.
It's the same thing with God. You have to continue He's going to pursue you, but you have to pursue him too.
Yeah, and it even makes me question, like, what are even, like, ways that you can even catch yourself? And, you know, honestly, I don't know. Like, I was just thinking about that, like, when you were talking about it, it's just like, how do you catch yourself from getting to that point of like, oh shit, now it's oops, I'm sorry, we're not, we don't cuss. Like, oh shoot,
She cusses y'all.
we're not an explicit podcast. We said we're not explicit. We like have that as a filter, like not explicit, like family friendly.
I'll go in and edit it after. I'll add the bleep.
Like, oh shoot, yeah. Like how could it have already been a year, 10 years, or 5 years?
Right.
It's just because it's like we get so caught up in like the worldly things. Like I think I talk about that so much
Distracted.
because it's like a big life concept of being so caught up in this world.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard not to. I mean, you have relationships, you're going to get caught up because that's, you know, and, you know, you work a job or you are a functioning member of society. It's like it's easy to get caught up in the world things because it's, you know, the world kind of forces you to care about it. You kind of have to.
That's your reality.
And
you know what I mean?
I think that's why it's so important that we renew our minds every day. I started a new book. I should start a section called like Reading with Lonnie, you know, but I started a new book because remember how I used to always bring up different books in the past episodes?
Yeah.
You have something in your tooth.
I do?
Yeah, it's on the side. Anyways,
Thanks.
I started a new book called The Happiness Advantage. A friend of mine recommended it to me, and it was talking about that happiness is more than just a mood. It's more than even just a choice. It's a work ethic, and it's something that you have to work at. And obviously it talked about meditation. I was talking about this with you this morning, of like how even in the Bible, like Jesus meditated. You know what I mean? He went to, you know, the woods and he meditated and prayed. And that's where he came back always renewed. And you know, when we, in that Bible verse that I quote so often that's in our office, Romans something, where it's like, don't be transformed, you know, by this worldly views basically, but be renewed, you know, by the transforming of your mind.
Be transformed by the renewing of your spirit.
Exactly, along those lines. You all know what I mean. So, if we know that, and we know that even, you know, Jesus, who is the Son of God, needed to also renew his own mind here on earth, we also need to renew our own minds here on earth.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's just so important to kind of like step away sometimes and like we were talking about in the beginning, like to take that rest, that break of rest, and like
Step away from the madness
just take
for
a
a little
break
bit.
for like a second.
Yeah.
And just to kind of like think about like, whoa, because you can get so caught up in actions and doing that you're not thinking anymore.
You go into the motions.
Yeah.
You go into the motions of life, and you wake up, go to work, get off, come back home, watch your shows, do it over and over and over, and then you look up and it's 2023. And you haven't really worked on your relationship with God. I wouldn't even say you've been to church. You haven't been to church. Like, yeah, having a community of people to praise with is important. But at the end of the day, He wants you to get to know Him more than you show up to church.
Right. I think there's like a difference between going through the motions and actually living. I think if you're just going through the motions mentally, I mean, your body is physically there. You may pop in mentally every now and then, but you're kind of just on go mode. Versus when I feel like if you think of like someone who's really living life, and you could just, I don't know if maybe you've met that one person, or you just meet them and you're like, wow, you are very much alive, you know?
Yeah.
And you are so in this moment.
Right.
You're not thinking of other things. You look in their eyes and they're very much there with you in that conversation or in that experience. And I think that's what we were meant to be able to enjoy. I was listening to another podcast the other day on P31 Ministries, which is a great podcast. Highly recommend if you haven't listened to it. All of them. And anyways, he talked about how because he was comparing depression to social media, and basically saying obviously the correlation that people tend to be more anxious, more depressed based off the amount of time they spend on social media. So increased amount of time on social media, you tend to feel those feelings.
Right.
And he was talking about how a lot of times that can be cured when a lot of people can just take away, obviously, their phones and enjoy the beauty around them. He said God did not spare an ounce of beauty anywhere. He said it's overly abundant. Everywhere you look, it's just beautiful.
It's true.
And when it comes to like living, like I was talking about, and being able to just look around and see the beauty in everything, that rock, the tree, look at the sky, the clouds,
right.
That person,
Everything.
You know what I mean? Like everything around you, you can very much feel so much more in that moment. And I think that also helps renew your mind and spirit in a short, burst throughout the day, because you're not so focused on again, like I was talking about, the worldly things that we were told that we should think about, like politics and XYZ. I'm not saying those things aren't important. I'm just saying that you shouldn't be locked into it. You know what I'm saying?
That shouldn't be the most important thing in your life.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be your God. You know what I mean? I mean,
It shouldn't be your God. Like, that's the biggest thing.
We were over in a different part of Vegas, and I was like, have you seen this mountain range before? Like, I've never even seen that mountain range before. Like, it's
I know.
beautiful.
And we were like up close to it, and it just looked, it was beautiful. It was breathtaking.
It was breathtaking in Las Vegas. We've lived here almost
our whole life.
lives.
And we've been all around, all areas.
We've never, at least we've probably have seen that mountain range before, but we've never taken the time to actually look at it and notice it. And I'm like, wow, like this is comparable to like Hawaii's mountain ranges.
I think it's like there's beauty in everything. I think that's what we kind of have forgotten, where we have been talking about obviously wanting to move and things like that and leaving Vegas. I think we forget to see like some of the beauty that is in here, and we always tend to forget that like God made this too. Not only did He make the beautiful mountains with the mist and the oceans of Hawaii, it's just beautiful, but He's also made the ranges of the Las Vegas Valley.
That's right, He did.
So,
and the bays of Oakland and the oceans of Huntington and the rolling hills of San Diego. He made all of that.
He made it all. Like the home of wherever you're at, like He made that. And I think if we can just
You're on
sit
holy
in
ground.
the moment, You're
on holy ground.
I think if you could think that way on everywhere you walk, it is holy. It came from His hands,
It's like when Mike
He
Todd
touched
says,
it all.
right?
There isn't a single part of this earth that He hasn't touched.
Right.
So it is all It's all
Here
holy.
is holy, right?
Even no matter how much sin could be there, how much whatever you want to talk about, craziness, where there is a lot of craziness in parts of the world right now, and maybe even in your own home, and you could feel that, it's still holy. He's
Right.
still there.
Right.
So we're at our destination. We went to IKEA.
We're at IKEA.
We're gonna go buy some stuff, but that was a good conversation. I
Yeah.
appreciate you talking with me.
I appreciate you. You ready to go shop? Let's get it.
Thank you guys,
Thank you guys
for
tapping
listening.
in.
Follow us. We're going to be back on Instagram. I don't know if we're coming back on TikTok. We'll talk about it. Catch us on YouTube, the Lookup Pod.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're here for you now. Every week, every Tuesday. I think we'll be back on our weekly episodes. But
we'll be back.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of good to think back and reflect and kind of looking back on the past 3 months. We have a lot more to share, a lot of good topics, some guests that we do want to bring on as well. So stay tuned.
I don't know if they'll be in the back or at the house.
Yeah.
Or what we're going to do. But awesome.
When it comes to that point, it comes to that point.
Thank you guys.
All right.
Appreciate you. What are we in every podcast on?
Psalms 121 verses 1 through 3.
Oh, I was making sure that you knew.
Okay, say it.
I lift my eyes up to the mountain. Where does my strength come from? My strength comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth.
Amen.
Amen. Look up.
Bye.